I'm sure you've heard by now that Overwatch 2 has a tank problem. I'm willing to bet that you've also heard dozens of different opinions on what is the core problem and how to fix it. Today, I want to go over what a tank should be in the first place by taking a look at real tanks and breaking it down into three simple categories. The first real combat tanks were devised at the end of World War I. Their purpose was simple: cross no man's land, a stretch of mud that was constantly pelted by heavy machine gun fire all through the day. The result was a large chunk of steel fitted with an engine and some tracks, capable of getting shot at and still moving forward. That's it. Take damage so the soldiers behind you don't get hit and keep moving forward. Slowly. Their top speed was only around 4 miles an hour. Although crude and not very reliable, their impact on the world of combat was undoubtedly immense. 20 years later, the tank's role in combat was vastly upgraded, showing just how powerful of a tool it could be in the right hands. Top speeds increased, better reliability, superior firepower, and not to mention being able to aim in just about any direction meant that tanks would pave the way for all armies in World War II. The tanks of this era were so instrumental in shaping history that every country had its own arms race to see what they could design and manufacture specifically to stop tanks from strolling into their borders and forcibly shutting down their military. They designed anti-tank rifles that fired steel core projectiles to pierce the armor and shut down the engine. They did very successful landmine operations that covered the battlefield with deadly traps. Toward the end of World War II, handheld tank busters like the Panzerschreck or the bazooka were incredibly effective, but only if given the proper training and circumstances. Fast forward to modern tanks, and now the technology is truly terrifying. Top speeds of up to 50 miles an hour, adaptive armor for defense against the most deadly tank-stopping weapons, extremely accurate and deadly cannons that are capable of firing a plethora of special ammunitions for each individual encounter, weapon stabilizers for firing while moving and maintaining accuracy, and even the ability to target hostile air support in rare situations. The modern tank is truly a force to be reckoned with, and capable of dealing damage, surviving damage, and taking vast amounts of space extremely quickly. Using history, here are the three categories that we can split Overwatch tanks into. Number 1, World War I tanks. Big, slow-moving damage sponges. Number 2, World War II tanks. Medium-sized speed and damage that can do a good job but get shut down completely in some situations. Number 3, modern tanks. Raid bosses that have lots of tools to dish out high damage and survive tough spots. Extremely difficult to deal with. Now let's take a look at what it would look like from a tank player's perspective in each category. World War I. Hold shield for whatever survivability cooldowns you have in order to let your team push forward to the next corner or the piece of cover on the map. Then, wait until the cooldown finishes, you heal up, your shield is replenished, and then slowly creep forward to the next corner. World War II tanks. Use your mobility and survivability to scout out what tools the enemy has, then back out once enough info has been acquired. Come up with a plan, simple is better, to take out a strategic target and push the advantage after. Take care to avoid being in the open for long and pay special attention to the tank killers. Modern tanks. Be the raid boss. Push in and demand space. The only thing that can stop you is the enemy raid boss. In a 1v1 fight, you should win against anyone else because you have the tools, survivability, and damage to outclass other roles. Now it's important to look at counterplay to each of the three categories of tanks, because after all it is a team game. World War I tanks. Ignore the tank and kill the squishies, because the tank can't really do anything on its own. Its only goal is to help those around it, but without them, it's basically worthless. Or you can just do so much damage to the tank that it falls over. World War II tanks. Use your abilities correctly to stop the tank from taking space and punishing them when they overextend. Make sure to avoid any good situations for the tank in question, like attacking a Doom in an enclosed space, or trying to advance on a Sigma in an open long shot, like Circuit Royale. Modern tanks. Here, you would have to work as a team with your own modern tank to make sure that they don't get any easy picks. Prioritize staying alive and dodging the tank's abilities, and only attacking when you have a clear advantage or a quality plan in place. Avoid 1v1s with the tank as much as possible, and leave that to the tank on your team. With all that said, it's fairly easy to see which current tanks fall into which category. Currently, with how the Overwatch dev team views tanks and patches, any tank can switch between any category at any time. I think this is a major problem. All tanks should at least be in the same category. The game would be much more dynamic if all tanks had counterplay, not just from the enemy's perspective, but also from the tank perspective. What counterplay does the first category have? Nothing. Just rely on teammates. If a tank has only one thing it is good at, such as surviving, only doing damage, or only mobility, they get extremely hard to balance. By having multiple different skills or situations that a tank can succeed in leads to more engaging gameplay and a more satisfying game design. So the obvious next question, what does Blizzard want to do with the tank role in Overwatch 2? Looking back at the launch of Overwatch 2 and the removal of a second tank, Blizzard stated that the single tank should be the raid boss of the lobby, which is what I agree with. Having a tank be very strong in multiple different ways makes the game inherently more team-based, because someone who is off on their own is susceptible to getting crushed by the tank. If your tank runs off on their own, your team will also get crushed by the enemy tank. Supports who are a bit more fragile can look to the protection of the tank on their team. DPS characters, well, we'll talk about them in another video. It's also very important to mention that the anti-tank tools in Overwatch 2 have gotten very good. They have been brought into the modern era, for sure. Most supports have good sustain, good damage, and good healing, not to mention good movement options. Based on your own experiences grinding the ranked ladder and writing out each patch in the quick play lobbies, what category do you think Blizzard should aim for? What category do you think each tank fits into currently? Please let me know what role you play and what you think the next tank role should be categorized in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.